Hey everyone, this is Hope from Pros Before Bros. I gotta adjust my chair here. Not only is there a rocky chair, it's a swivelly chair. It's the best of both worlds. But doing a video that's kind of a departure from the videos I typically do on this channel, and that is actually a discussion about my personal writing techniques and currently what I'm working on. So I got this question from one of my viewers, and that is Erin George. Erin, this video is dedicated to you. Thank you so much for giving me these questions and also give me your support and feedback. I really enjoy reading all the commentary you have, and I'm so excited to have you as a viewer and hopefully as a new friend. So I'm hoping that I touch base on everything that you're asking, and I got some clarification on some of the things that you're asking. I hope I got everything there. I said hope a lot, and my name is Hope. Jeez. Puns enormous. Okay, so let's just hop into this. So you were asking me about my writing, and I really am excited to talk about this because I don't talk about my writing at all. I don't know why. It's not that I'm ashamed of it. I never really had to opportunity to sit down and talk about it. So I feel like this is a great time to talk about it now. And you're probably going to hear my dogs barking in the background. They're going crazy. I think the neighborhood kids are having a good old time or something, and it's driving them nuts. But yeah, I figured I'll go ahead and talk to you guys about that. So, writing wise, wow, where do you begin when you're talking about something like this? I guess I'll start with the works in progress I have. There are two works in progress that I am currently working on, and I have been working on for a number of years. The first work in progress that I have is actually something that I feel like has always been in its infancy. It's been around, kind of shuffling through my brain for several years, but I haven't really sat down and started doing it. And then the second one is uh, loosely based on a true story. It's based on my family's past, and I will go ahead and start with that one first. I feel like that would be the easiest one to start with. Because it's got a little bit more concrete information involved. So, the first one, the first story that I'm working on, and I don't know if either one of these are going to become books or if they're going to become short stories or anything. I have no future plans for them right now. I'm just simply desperate to get them on paper. I guess I want to get them on paper that way. That's the first step out of the way. Uh, the first one is, like I said, loosely based on a true story, and it's involving my family. So I don't think I've told any of you guys this. My mother is half Japanese, and my grandmother and my grandfather both lived in Japan. And the story that I'm trying to get down on paper is basically their love story. So back in the 1940s, I want to say it was like 46 or 47, my grandfather was stationed in Japan. This was shortly after the war, and he was stationed to be kind of like one of the engineering people over in Japan, helping with the rebuild of occupied Japan at that point, and trying to clean up from just the war, the aftermath of the war. So he was over in Japan at the time, and he was from little old town farm family Ohio, and he actually signed up, and the way he signed up for the war was really kind of sad. He signed up because his sister had tragically passed away in a car accident. It was his younger sister, the baby of the family, and it was a shock to everybody. The way she died was extremely violent, and it had left just a negative mark on the family, in particular his mother. His mother actually went through horrible states of depression and had to be medicated at one point, um, because she just lost the youngest child in her family, and it was quite devastating. Um, so he had to deal with that, and I think he was trying to find some sort of escape at the time, and the military obviously was the calling, and uh, at that time he was also, I mean, the need for military servicemen was extremely high for obvious reasons. So he ended up going into the military. He was later on stationed in Japan, where he met my grandmother. And the way that they met is, it's kind of like, when my mom told me this story, I thought she was seriously joking. It sounded like a Lifetime movie. But the way they met apparently was, he was in a local hotel that was inside Tokyo at the time. I believe it was within Tokyo. Um, he was with some friends. His friends were trying to cheer him up, and obviously they decided to take him to this hotel bar, to spend some time with him, to listen to music and just hang out. Um, and he was at this table. He was sitting there. He was thinking about home. He was really depressed. And he happened to look up and he saw my grandmother. And my grandmother apparently was like right outside the bar, inside the lobby area. And she was putting dry cleaning, I guess, into like a cart, if you will. She was a seamstress slash laundress for this hotel. And he happened to see her, and he thought she was beautiful. He thought she was a very pretty girl, and he really wanted to talk to her. He was really shy. He didn't know exactly how he would do it. So he went up to her and he started talking to her in a very limited Japanese that he knew. And obviously, since he was from, said obviously a lot in this conversation so far, since he was from Ohio, he wasn't too familiar with Japanese or any other foreign language for that matter. He had to learn it on the fly. He was stumbling around with his words, and it just made it so much more difficult to have a conversation with her. But finally, he was able to kind of talk to her and express that he really wanted to get to know her as a friend. And he ended up talking to her and finally decided he wanted to teach her some English. And in that one encounter, he decided he was going to teach her the song, and this was on the billboards at the time. I believe they had done like a remake of it again, and it was "You Are My Sunshine." So that song has a lot of resonance in my family. Like, we have that, like in my house, I have plaques saying "You Are My Sunshine" pretty much everywhere. Um, in reference to that moment in history. That's when my grandfather and grandmother really fell in love with each other. Um, After a certain period of time had passed, they ended up getting married, and they ended up living in Japan for a couple years until my mother was about 6 or 7 months old. And then they moved back to Ohio, or the United States. Um, so, yeah, the story has a lot of resonance. And the reason why I really wanted to get it down on paper, well, there's a couple reasons. The first reason is both of my grandparents are now deceased. Unfortunately, I've never gotten a chance to meet them. My grandmother died in 1967 of cancer, and then my grandfather died in 1956 of a heart attack. So all I have are stories. And if I could relive them for just a few moments by writing them, I'm going to go ahead and do it. So, and also the other reason is because my mom has been begging me to write this story. She I think misses her family quite a bit, and she lost them at such a young age. And their story is so unique to how we are, as a family. I think that's what she really wants to have. She wants to have on paper. She wants to have that physical imprint. So I actually started writing that a few years ago, and I write about it on and off. And unfortunately, with it, I can't really base it fully on a true story because there's so many things I don't know. There's so many snippets in their history that I don't have the opportunity to know because they're no longer with us. So I started writing fillers in for that story to make it more complete. So it's somewhat still true, but there's other things in there that obviously I had to add through the creative process to make that work. So I have been writing that for, like I said, a couple years now. And I don't know what is going to come of it. I don't know if I'm ever going to publish it or not because it's just more so like a therapeutic state for me to write this. But who knows? I'm always keeping that open. So the second story that I'm working on, um, and I feel like this is going to end up being not a short story, but something very long, and quite a process, just like the other one is. Actually came about after I went and after I went to a book signing and a book discussion. Crazy, right? So I went to this book signing for one of my favorite book authors, if you will. For my favorite author, and you guys have heard me say her name a million times, but her name is Meg Letter, and she wrote The Museum of Heartbreak and Letting Go of Gravity. She's from Cincinnati. So I really admire her. I really look up to her as an author and as a person. And she actually came to Joseph Beth, which is the local bookstore here in Cincinnati, and did a launch for Letting Go of Gravity, her most recent book. During that time, I had the opportunity to talk to her because I was running into a huge bout of depression where I just didn't have it in me to write anymore. I just was questioning whether or not I should continue. Even with the story that I just mentioned, I was struggling really bad, and my depression was making things so much worse. Again, you're your worst critic, especially when you have depression. So I talked to Meg about this, and I was talking to her in particular because she had mentioned before that she had depression, and it was really tough for her to sometimes function and write these things down. So I was asking her feedback on things such as this. How do you pick up a pen when you feel so low you can't even get out of bed? So she was talking to me, and she said, ultimately, you just need to do it. You need to write about anything you want. It could be complete crap later on after you read it. It could be something absolutely wonderful, but you don't know until you put it on paper. So I took that as sound advice, went home, and fell asleep. And the next day, I ended up waking up with this story in my head. And it was really weird how it came about. It actually came about in a series of dreams. I had this dream for the last 2 or 3 years. Same characters. It was the same town every single time. Um, Different occurrences, but ultimately these two characters were um, running from something that was not healthy for them for a different reason for each character. So there's a male character, there's a female character. It The dream's always based in the late 50s, early 60s, and the male character is basically, I'm try to describe this guy as best as I can. He has his own devils and demons that he's trying to escape, but he's got a very healthy way of looking at life, and that's simply that you just have to move forward and you have to take chances, and um, you don't you can't sit and worry about what is. Whereas the girl inside my story is very hesitant, very reserved, and very full of doom and hopelessness. Um, a constant theme that I have with her is inside even the dreams and the story. She can be sitting there having a conversation with this gentleman and feel so much hope for just a split second, and then all of a sudden she gets this feeling this is going to end, and clams up, so to speak. So it's still obviously a work in progress, and I to this day I'm still having a hard time figuring out what it is she's running from, especially him. I'm still working those little things out. um, and it's kind of crazy because it's almost like they're leading me in their own story path. Especially if I'm writing it down. There was a sequence where I was writing about them in a diner, and inside the sequence they're having just a simple conversation, and then he's asking her open up and tell him why she's running. And it's like I'm on suspense too, because I'm trying to figure out how she's running, why she's running at this point, and what's causing her to want to escape whatever it is that's haunting her. And I'm still trying to figure that out to this day, what the reason is. Hopefully I get to that point where I do know. I don't, again, know if this is going to become something that is, just for me, that I write and stays tucked away in one of my journals, or if I do something with it later on. It's one of those things I'm going to have to see. So my technique with writing is very, very weird. With that particular story, I am actually writing in fragments. So I have wrote, like about previous dreams I've had with the story, line in particular, and there's stuff that I've wrote that I thought about over time. So it's like snapshots almost. That, I guess that's the best way I could describe it. Is it's almost like taking a picture of one tiny occurrence, and that's what it is. So, like I said, I wrote about a scene in a diner between these two characters, and it starts really weird. It starts where she's talking about, oddly, I don't even know if this exists, blueberry ice cream with waffle. I don't know why, but that was inside the dream sequence, and it kind of resonated with me a little bit. It seemed like an unusual combination. So I have that little fragment. So I'm imagining a very happy conversation, and all of a sudden it turns dark and dreary because the character Nick, the male character Nick, is pushing for Dottie, my female character, to open up about what is causing her so much hesitancy about um, living a happy life. So I don't know what the relationship between the characters are at this point. I'm still trying to figure that out as well. I guess my writing process is really organic, and it does come from fragments. So it's literally like taking a picture. You get a brief second seeing the emotions on both of these characters, an action that both of these characters are invested in, and then just kind of moving on from there. So a lot of the writing for that particular story is fragmented, and what I end up doing when I have stories like that, at least with short stories I've done in the past that have that similar writing pattern, is I will try to combine them over a period of time. So one scene will be combined with another, and then if there's some sort of loophole or like something missing, I will add a filler in between. I will write a filler that will fit both of those like a puzzle piece. Um, so that's kind of where my writing style goes with that particular story, and usually that's how a lot of my short stories begin. The only one that hasn't had that is the loosely based on a true story piece that I'm working on, that I've really started with chronological method where I write at the very beginning and I've been kind of writing in that continuation. And I think it's simply because the story's already there. It just needs to have the bones built and put into place, if that makes sense. So that is really my creative process at this point in my life. Some of the techniques that I do besides that is I'm a firm believer of the past year. I think the way to kind of keep your mind going and keep everything on track is to really discipline yourself in terms of your writing. So I have a designated 3 day out of the week 15-minute sessions that I actually do. uh, a free write is what I call it, where for 15 minutes out of the day, whether it's first thing in the morning before I go to work or if it's late at night after I get home, I sit down with my journal and I will write for 15 minutes. Sometimes I'll write a prompt, sometimes I'll just simply write about my day. If I need a prompt of any sort, I usually utilize apps. The I'm trying to think of what the app is. I believe it's called the Writer's Toolkit. It's actually on Google Play that I use it. I will utilize that sometimes where users will send in little prompts here and there. And I take that and I'll go with that for 15 minutes. I'll write something. And that just kind of keeps everything fresh and that kind of keeps me motivated to keep going. Of course, there's times where I simply don't do the 15 minutes and I do a full hour and work on one of my stories. That's another thing that I love to do as well. Um, but I feel like sometimes you have to mix it up. You don't want to focus too much on one particular story, at least in my opinion, um, that you shut down when it comes to anything else that might be just as creative and deserve time on paper. So that's one thing I also do. Now, a lot of things that I hear people talking about, I gotta adjust, guys, because this chair's getting uncomfortable. A lot of things I hear writers talk about, or anyone in general talk about when they are trying to write, is the dreaded writer's block. And it's 10 times worse, in my opinion, when you have any sort of mental illness because you're very self-deprecating. You don't want to talk about the you don't you when you write, you don't, what's the word I'm looking for, you don't think it's good enough. So some things I end up doing with my writer's block is I will simply use tools or aids to help me with my writer's block. I'm just going to move that to the side. And one thing I like is pre-written journals. What's a pre-written journal? So a pre-written journal for me would be anything that you could pick up at a bookstore or pick up on Amazon. This one is an example of a pre-written journal. It's 300 writing prompts. I picked this up, I think I picked it up at Target, if I remember correctly. But Target, sometimes Barnes & Noble will have this inside their bargain books section. I love these books because they will give you a prompt and then you simply go with it. And it doesn't have to be anything long. These are perfect for those 15 minutes free writes I was telling you guys about. I use that often, especially if I just need a refresher and a break from my current works in progress. Another item that I have grown to love, and I actually got 3 of these on Amazon. I don't know if they still have these. It's been so long since I've bought these, and thankfully I haven't had to go buy any more. Are these Just Right journals, and these are all based on some sort of theme. So this one's the Myth, and it is the Paranormal edition. I love this style. So these type of books help you with not only putting together like a prompt, it'll give you a backstory, it'll give you a couple characteristics of a person inside your story. Let me see if I can find one that I haven't filled out yet. That's the question there. So, let's see here. It even has titles, which I haven't even had a chance to even look at. Where did it go? I know I saw one in here I haven't done. Okay, so it will give you like a prompt on the side, and it will give you what happens next, and that's your calling, if you will. So this is the prompt, and this is the side that you fill in. And the prompt for this, for instance, is she closed her eyes, held out her arms, and fell over the edge of the cliff. And then you write from there. Yeah, it might be a little bit trite to use these books, but sometimes I find them very helpful, especially if in the sense where I'm writing these fragments and I need a filler in between. Sometimes I'll reach for these kind of journals to kind of help me with that, to get that filler. I've been really inspired by them, but they have one that's called Ashes, and it's kind of like an apocalypse based theme inside that particular journal. And then they have one called Fatal, and that's suspense. Beautiful journals, and I think they only cost me like $11 a piece when I picked them up. So I have used those as well as tools in my writing. And then, of course, obviously, the obvious thing that I like to do is observe and people watch. So one thing that I enjoy, since I live downtown in Cincinnati, and I also like to go visit bigger cities. One city that I visit quite a few times throughout the few years that I've lived here in Cincinnati is Cincinnati. It's Chicago, because it's only a 5-hour drive from us. I like to take public transit a lot, just for the reason being that I could take my journal and I could take a pen with me and a pair of my headphones, put one earbud in, and listen to people talk and interact on public transit. I come up with a lot of good character profiles doing that. So that's one thing I have done in the past. I know that might sound voyeuristic, but I swear to you, it works. You come up with so many great character profiles simply by getting out into your community and listening and observing. So, like I said, sometimes I won't even take my purse with me. I'll take my wallet. I'll take this tiny size notebook or any tiny size notebook that I have on hand, pen and a paper, pen, and just hop onto the metro. Whether it's a streetcar, whether it's a train or a bus, and just sit there for a duration of a ride and just take in the sights. So that is pretty much my thing. Other than that, the only other thing I really do is, this is obviously my book sleeve that I carry my books in. I also carry a little journal in this as well. I have journals all over the place. So this one is very simple. I think my friend got this for me at CVS, and it is a soft cover, and I just fill it up and just carry it around with me for those like fragmented scenes, and of course for any stories that I'm working on. As you could tell, I filled up a couple portions here, and my handwriting is really crappy, so you saw that as well. But yeah, I keep those on hand. So one thing I can tell you as a writer, if you're looking into starting your journey as a writer, is make sure you're always carrying a piece of paper, or not piece of paper, more than a piece of paper. Carry a journal with you. Carry a journal and carry a pen with you, because you never know where you're going to find your inspiration. I hope those answered your questions, Erin. If you do have any more questions, and that goes to everybody, including Erin, please feel free to leave those comments below. I'll be happy to answer them as time goes on. And if you enjoyed this video, please give it a big thumbs up. If you want to subscribe and you're new, feel free to subscribe. Either way, it was a pleasure hanging out with you this afternoon. I will talk to you guys soon. Bye-bye.